Hello everyone, this is Suzanne at God Crochet and Chatter. Welcome back. I wasn't on yesterday, as you well know. I went to my daughters and we made rock candy, several batches, and it was amazing. I never realized how much work went into that candy until I was actually in on the process of making it. And she makes it for the whole family and gives everybody a sampler tin to take home. Well, I certainly will have a greater appreciation for that candy this year than what I've ever had in my life. All right, I thought I'd come on and we're going to read another chapter in our book. I had a long day yesterday, and again, my knees kept me up all night in a constant level 8 and above pain. And after I get done with this, Ron's going to take me over to the hospital, the doctor's office. I called them and they said that if I'm in that much constant pain, I need to go to the emergency room to see what's going on. But I wanted to come on first and do our next chapter. I'm just as excited to know what's going on with Betsy and her sister. And we're not going to delay. We're going to get started. This is a little bit longer chapter, so we'll see how far we get. All right, this is chapter 13, entitled Raven's Brook. For 2 days and night, we were carried deep into the land of our fears. Remember when we last left off, they had landed in Germany. Occasionally, the loaves of bread were passed around, but no provision had been made for sanitation, and the air in the car was such that few could eat. More terrible than the crush of bodies and the filth, the single obsession was something to drink. 2 or 3 times when the train stopped, the door was slid open a few inches and a pail of water passed in. But we had become animals, incapable of plan or system. Those near the door got it all. I can imagine. You're hot, you're thirsty, the stench is overwhelming, and just when that bucket is passed, they're not even thinking of sharing it. They're so desperate. On the morning of the 4th day, the train stopped again, and the door was opened its full width. Like infants, on hands and knees, we crawled to the opening and lowered ourselves over the side. In front of us was a blue lake. On the far side, among sycamore trees, rose a white church steeple. The stronger prisoners hauled buckets of water from the lake. We drank through cracked and swollen lips. The cars carrying the men had disappeared. Only a handful of soldiers, some of them looking no older than 15, were there to guard 1,000 women. No more were needed. We could scarcely walk, let alone resist. After a while, they marched us off. For a mile, the road followed the shore of the lake, and then it left it to climb a hill. I wondered if Betsy could make it to the top, but at the sight of trees and sky had revived her, and she supported me as much as I her. We passed a number of local people on foot and in horse-drawn wagons. The children seemed wonderful to me, pink-cheeked and healthy. They returned my stares with wide-eyed interest. The adults, however, turned their heads away. From the crest of the hill we saw it, a city of low, gray barracks surrounded by concrete walls on which guard towers rose at intervals. In the very center, a square smokestack emitted a thin gray vapor into the sky. Raven's Brook. The word passed back through the lines. This was the notorious death camp, whose name we heard even in Harlem. As Betsy and I stumbled down the hill, I felt the Bible thumping between my shoulder blades. God's good news. Was it to this world that he had spoken of? Now we were close enough to see the skull and crossbones on the walls of worn, electrified wiring along the top. The massive iron gate swung in. We marched between them. Acres of soot-gray barracks stretched ahead of us. Can you imagine you're going into this and seeing the skull and crossbones on the walls, warning of electricity? Wow. Just inside the wall was a row of water spigots. We charged them, thrusting hands, arms, legs, even heads under the streams of water, splashing away the stench of the boxcars. A squad of women guards rushed at us, shouting and driving us back from the faucets. We were herded down an avenue between barracks. This camp appeared far grimmer than the one we had left. I remember seeing pictures of that, of the Holocaust and the concentration camp and that wide opening where they were going to walk over. The camp appeared far grimmer than the one we had left. It was set down in a long, man-made valley rising on every side of those towering, wire-topped walls. At last we halted. In front of us, a vast canvas tent roof, no sides, covered an acre or more of straw-strewn ground. Betsy and I found a spot on the edge of this area and sank down. There's a little picture. Some of the prisoners had brought scissors. Everywhere beneath the huge tent, women were cutting one another's hair to discourage the lice. Of course, we must do the same. Long hair was a folly in such a place. But as I cut Betsy's waves, I cried. Wow, this is the height of emotion right now for them, I'm sure. Toward evening, there was a commotion at one end of the tent. A line of SS guards was moving across it, driving women out from under the canvas. We scrambled to our feet and snatched up our blankets as they bore down upon us. Perhaps 100 yards beyond the tent, the chase stopped. We stood about, uncertain what to do. Whether a new group of prisoners had arrived or what the reason was for driving us from the tent, no one knew. Women began spreading their blankets on the hard cinder ground. Slowly it dawned on Betsy and me that we were to spend the night here where we stood. We laid my blanket on the ground, stretched out side by side, and pulled hers over us. The night is dark, and I'm far from home. Betsy's sweet soprano was picked up by the voices all around us. Lead thou me on. We were woken up sometimes in the middle of the night by a clap of thunder and a deluge of rain. The blankets soaked through and water gathered in puddles beneath us. In the morning, our faces were black from the cinder mud. We were still wringing water from our blankets when the command came to line up for coffee. There was a slice of black bread for each prisoner, then nothing more until we were given a ladle of turnip soup and a small boiled potato late in the afternoon. In between, we were kept standing at rigid attention on the soggy ground where we had spent the night. We were near one edge of the huge camp, close enough to the outer wall to see the triple row of electric wires running along the top. Wow. And that's not even going to be the worst of it. 2 entire days we spent this way, stretching out again on the second night right where we stood. It did not rain again, but the ground and blankets were still damp. Betsy began to cough. I took Nolly's blue sweater from my pillowcase, wrapped it around her, and gave her a few drops of the vitamin oil. By morning, she had agonizing intestinal cramps. Boy, sometimes we think we've been through things. I'm sitting here with my knees hurting and thinking, well, I kind of feel ashamed of myself for complaining so much sometimes, but I can't imagine going through what they face. And on top of it, all those hardships, and on top of that, not feeling good. Horrible conditions. On the third night, the order came to report to the processing center. A 10-minute march brought us to the building. We inched along a corridor into a huge reception room. There, under the harsh ceiling lights, we saw a dismal sight. As each woman reached a desk where some officer sat, she had to lay whatever she carried onto a growing pile. A few desks further along, she had to strip every scrap of clothes, throw them on a second pile, and walk naked past the security of security of a dozen SS men into the shower room. Talk about dehumanizing them, stripping them of all their dignity and pride. Again, wow. Coming out of the shower, each woman would put on only a thin prison dress and a pair of shoes. But Betsy needed that sweater. She needed the vitamins. Most of all, we needed our Bible. How could we live in this place without it? That's a lesson for us. How can we live in this world without our Bibles? They're so very precious. We were almost at the first desk. I fished in my pillowcase, drew out the bottle of vitamins, and closed my fist around them. Reluctantly, we dropped the other things on the heap that was fast becoming a mountain. Dear God, I prayed, you have given us this precious book. You have kept it hidden through checkpoints and inspections. You have used it for so many. I felt Betsy stagger against me and looked at her in alarm. Her face was white, her lips pressed tight together. I begged a guard in German to show us the toilets. He jerked his head in the direction of the shower room. Betsy and I stepped out of line and walked to the door of the big, dank-smelling room with its row on row of overhead spigots. It was empty, waiting for the next batch of 50 naked and shivering women to be admitted. Please, I said to the SS man guarding the door, where are the toilets? Use the drain holes, he snapped as we stepped inside. He slammed the door behind us. We stood alone in the room where a few minutes later we would return, stripped of the clothes on our backs. There were prison things we were put. Here were the prison things we were to put on, piled just inside the door. Then we saw a pile of benches stacked in the corner. They were slimy and mildew, crawling with cockroaches, but to me they seemed furniture of heaven itself. Take off the sweater, I hissed. Oh, wait a minute. Take the sweater off, I hissed, fumbling with the string at my neck. Betsy handed it to me, and in an instant I had wrapped it around the Bible and the vitamin bottle and stuffed the bundle behind the benches. Boy, she's thinking pretty quick on her feet here. So when we were herded into that room 10 minutes later, we were not poor but rich in this new evidence of the care of him who was God, even of Ravensbrück. We stood beneath the spigots as long as the flow of icy water lasted, feeling it softened our lice-eaten skin. Then we clustered, dripping wet, around the heap of prison dresses, holding them up, looking for approximate fits. I squirmed into a dress and then reached behind the benches and shoved the little bundle quickly inside the neck. It made a bulge you could have seen across the grope mark. I flattened it out best I could, but there was no real concealing it beneath the thin cotton dress. All the while, I had the incredible feeling that it did not matter, that all I had to do was walk straight ahead. As we trooped back out through the shower room door, the SS man ran their hands over every prisoner, front, back, and sides. The woman ahead of me was searched 3 times. Behind me, Betsy was searched. No hand touched me. Coincidence? I think not. I think God was hiding her. I mean, what are the odds that they would not have searched her? Astronomical. Betsy and I arrived in Barracks 8, bringing not only the Bible, but a new knowledge of the power of God. There were 3 women already asleep in the bed assigned to us. They made room for us best they could, but the matrons sloped, and I kept sliding to the floor. At last, all 5 of us lay sideways across the bed and managed to get shoulders and elbows arranged. The blanket was threadbare, but the overcrowding produced its own warmth. Betsy had put on the blue sweater beneath her dress. Now that she was wedged now between me and the others, her shivering gradually subsided, and she was asleep. I lay a little longer, watching a searchlight sweep the wall in long, regular arcs. All right, we're going to stop there, and we're going to pick up the rest of the chapter, Lord willing, tomorrow. like I say, this chapter is quite long, and I'm not feeling very well. So now they're in the camp. They've been humiliated. They've been herded like cattle. They've been stripped of everything, but they still manage to have the Word of God. And we can clearly see that God's hand was over Betsy and her sister. And now they're just going to finally get some long-needed rest, I'm sure. And we will pick up, like I said, tomorrow or the next day to see what's going to happen in this horrible place where they are. I guess so far I would say that no matter where we end up being, what situation we find ourselves in, that God will provide a way. And we're certainly seeing that in the lives of Betsy and her sister. All right, everyone. I would ask that you keep me in your prayers today. Ron's going to take me on over to the hospital, and we're going to try to get an answer to why I'm in so much pain all the time. All right, you take care. Have a blessed day in the Lord. And Lord willing, I'll be back home today. It's kind of like I don't want to be back home today because that means I'm still going to be in pain and there's no answers. I'm really hoping, and I hope that you pray for some answers for me as why I'm in all this is going on. You know, I got too much to do. Christmas is coming, right? It's never a good time, is it? All right, everyone. I will talk to you perhaps tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.